The massive chamber floated in space between three moons, its crystalline walls stretching for miles in every direction. Inside, creatures from across the galaxy sat in perfect circles, their forms as different as the worlds they came from. Some breathed water, others fed on light, and a few existed as pure energy contained in metal shells. Ambassador Kyung-ho adjusted his environmental suit as he watched the central display. The hologram showed another dead system where 5 billion beings had lived just days ago. Now there was nothing but empty space and floating debris. "The Void Harbingers have consumed the Terrian colonies," announced Elder Vorthak, his crystal, body pulsing with dim light. "That makes 7 systems in 7 cycles. The pattern is accelerating." A ripple of fear passed through the assembled delegates. The Morphic Collective's representative, looking like liquid silver poured into a vague, humanoid shape, spoke first. "We need more data. How can we act without understanding what we face?" Representative Minho from the Threx hegemony nodded his massive head. His people had ruled star systems when most species were still learning to make fire. "Perhaps we should try to communicate with them. All intelligent life must be capable of reason." "Reason?" The Cathari delegate stood, her forearms spread wide. "These things consumed an entire nursery world. 10 billion children died screaming. What reason is there in that? Which is exactly why we must proceed carefully," interrupted the Zalathi ambassador. "My people have protected the trade routes for 3,000 years. We cannot risk our fleets on a desperate attack." Kyung-ho listened to the familiar arguments. He had heard them in dozens of emergency sessions over the past months. Always the same words, always the same fears, always the same excuses for inaction. The holographic display changed, showing long-range sensor data from the galaxy's rim. Dark shapes moved between the stars, each one larger than a moon. They left trails of absolute emptiness behind them, as if existence itself had been erased. "The Botanical Collective suggests we evacuate the outer systems," said a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. "Our living ships could transport refugees to the core worlds." "And abandon millions of colonies?" The Cathari delegate's voice rose to a battle cry. "My ancestors would disown me for such cowardice." "Your ancestors are dead," replied the Threxy. Representative coldly. "As we all will be if we act foolishly. The Harbingers destroyed the Vex Empire at the height of their power. The Vex had weapons that could crack planets, and they lasted exactly 47 hours. Silence fell over the chamber. Everyone knew the stories of the Vex. Their empire had spanned 2 galaxy arms before the Harbingers came. Now their worlds were graveyards floating in empty space. "We should form a committee," suggested the delegate from the administrative worlds. "A proper study group with representatives from each major species. We need protocols, procedures, proper chains of command." "While you form committees, more worlds die," growled the Cathari delegate. "Better some worlds than all worlds," replied the Threx representative. "Patience has served the galaxy well for 10,000 years." Kyung-ho accessed his personal data pad, reading reports from the Rim territories. The messages grew more desperate each day, entire civilizations begging for help, for weapons, for anything that might let them fight back. But the council continued to debate. "What of the humans?" asked a small voice from the back of the chamber. The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Several delegates actually laughed. "Humans?" Elder Vorthak's crystal form flickered with what might have been amusement. "They have barely left their home system, still fighting wars with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. What could such primitives possibly contribute?" "They have shown remarkable aggression," noted the Morphic Collective representative. "Perhaps too much aggression. Their historical records show constant warfare among their own kind." "Exactly why they should not be involved," said the Threx delegate firmly. "Violent species make poor allies. They tend to complicate delicate situations." "I heard they requested permission to send aid," whispered the Botanical Collective's voice. "Which was properly denied," announced Elder Vorthak. "This is a matter for civilized species. Let the humans hide on their little blue world while experienced leaders handle this crisis." The debate continued for hours, then days. While the council argued about procedures and protocols, The harbingers moved steadily inward. Entire sectors went dark on the galactic communication network. Refugee ships fled toward the core worlds, carrying stories of worlds consumed in hours. On the fourth day of debate, news arrived that the harbingers had destroyed the Proxima trading stations. They were now only months away from the first major. "Colony worlds. We must act soon," urged the Cathari delegate. "We must act wisely," countered the Threx representative. And so the argument continued. While in the darkness between stars, ancient things older than civilization moved closer to the galaxy's beating heart. The greatest minds of hundreds of worlds sat in their crystal chamber, paralyzed by fear and tradition, as the shadow of extinction fell across the stars. Far away on a small blue planet, humanity remained unaware that their fate was being decided by those who considered them too primitive to even ask for help. Dr. Jiwoo stared at her computer screen until her eyes burned. The numbers made no sense. She rubbed her temples and looked again at the data from Deep Space Station Omega. 3 coffee cups sat empty on her desk, and the clock showed she had been working for 14 hours straight. "Hyunsu, come look at this," she called to her colleague across the laboratory. Dr. Hyunsu rolled his chair over, his own face showing the same exhaustion that Jiwoo felt. They had been monitoring deep space for 5 years, watching for asteroids and recording stellar activity. Nothing had prepared them for this. "The gravitational readings are impossible," Jiwoo said, pointing at the screen. "Look at Sector 77 Alpha. Yesterday there were 3 star systems. Today there is nothing." "Equipment malfunction?" Hyunsu suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. "I thought so too, but look at these readings from Station Beta and Station Gamma. Same thing. Entire star systems just gone." They worked through the night, checking and rechecking their data. By morning, the horrible truth was clear. Something was moving through the galaxy, consuming entire solar systems and leaving nothing behind but empty space. "We need to contact Admiral Dongmin immediately," Jiwoo said. Admiral Dongmin received their report aboard the Earth Defense Force flagship Indomitable. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. He read the scientist's data twice, his face growing more serious with each page. "How certain are you?" he asked. "Completely certain," Jiwoo replied through the video link. "Whatever this is, it has consumed at least 15 star systems in the past month, and it is moving toward the galactic center." Dongmin studied the star charts on his command table. Earth sat in a quiet spiral arm, far from the galactic center but not beyond reach of whatever was destroying worlds. "Open a channel to the Galactic Council," he ordered his communications officer. Lieutenant Minwoo worked at his console for several minutes before shaking his head. "Sir, we are not on their priority communication list. I can send a message, but it will take time to reach them." "Send it anyway. Tell them Earth offers full military cooperation against this threat." The message was sent with Earth's entire catalog of military capabilities, scientific data, and personnel records. Dongmin waited 3 days for a response. When it came, the message was brief and dismissive. Primitive species should remain in their home systems while experienced civilizations address this matter. Do not interfere. Primitive. Lieutenant Minwoo read the message aloud, his voice filled with disbelief. "They think we are children playing with toys," Dongmin said quietly. "They have no idea what humans can do when we are cornered." A week later, emergency broadcasts began reaching Earth from the outer colonies. The trading world of Kepler 442b sent desperate messages as dark shapes appeared in their system. "They are not ships," the final transmission said. "They are something else, something that eats light itself. The ocean is turning black, the sky is falling. Oh God, they are coming for the cities. They are coming for—" The transmission ended in static. Dongmin stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the empty space where Kepler 442b had been. His crew was silent. Everyone knew that 3 million people had lived on that world. Families, children, farmers, teachers, all gone. "Sir," Lieutenant Minwoo said softly, "we are receiving similar distress calls from 12 other systems." "Show me," Dongmin ordered. The main screen filled with desperate faces. Colony governors begging for help. Mothers holding their children as darkness fell from the sky. scientists trying to understand what was happening as their instruments failed. "Can we help them?" asked Commander Yunji, Dongmin's second in command. "Our fastest ships would take months to reach them," Dongmin replied. "And what could we do? We do not even know what we are fighting." More messages came in over the following days, each one the same. Dark things appearing in space, light being consumed, life ending, and then silence. The Galactic Council sent one more message to Earth. "Do not leave your system. This matter is beyond your understanding." That night, Dongmin stood alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars. Earth was a small world with a young civilization. They had no energy weapons, no shields, no technology that could challenge the ancient powers of the galaxy, but they had something else. He thought of his grandfather, who had fought in the old wars on Earth. His grandfather had told him stories of impossible battles won by ordinary people who refused to surrender. People who lit fires in the darkness and never stopped fighting. Dongmin opened his personal communicator and sent a message to Earth Command. "Prepare all military forces for immediate deployment. We are going to war." "Sir," came the reply, "the Galactic Council has ordered us to remain in our system." "The Galactic Council," Dongmin said, "can go to hell. Earth will not hide while innocents die. If the galaxy will not act, then humanity will light the first flame." He looked out at the stars again, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, ancient evils were moving toward everything he loved. But Earth would not go quietly into that darkness, not while there was still fight left in the human heart. The shipyards around Earth blazed with light that could be seen from the moon. Chief Engineer So-min had not slept in 3 days. Her team worked around the clock, welding new weapons to old ships and pushing fusion reactors beyond their safe limits. "The power cores are running too hot," her assistant warned, showing her readings that glowed angry red on his tablet. "Then we make them run hotter," So-min replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "These ships need to hit harder than anything the galaxy has ever seen." She walked through the modification bays where human ships were being transformed into weapons of war. The destroyer Defiance hung in massive clamps while workers installed experimental plasma cannons along its hull. The cruiser Phoenix received new armor plating made from materials that barely existed outside of laboratories. "Will they work?" asked Admiral Dongmin as he toured the shipyard. "They will work once," So-min said honestly. "Maybe twice if we are lucky. These modifications will burn out the ship's systems, but they will make the enemy hurt first." Dongmin nodded. He had not expected his ships to return from this fight. What mattered was making the enemy pay for every human life. In the crew quarters, volunteers lined up to join the fleet. Captain Jin-ho walked among them, reading their files. Most were young, barely out of military academy. Others were veterans of Earth's old wars, men and women with gray hair and steady hands. "You all know this is likely a one-way trip," Jin-ho told them. "The enemy destroyed civilizations that had weapons we can only dream of. We are flying into certain death." Not one person left the line. The first human fleet launched 2 weeks later. 50 ships carrying humanity's best and brightest into the darkness between stars. They jumped to hyperspace while Earth watched and prayed. Captain Jin-ho stood on the bridge of the Defiance as they dropped out of hyperspace near Proxima Centauri. Long-range sensors immediately detected the enemy. Dark shapes moved between the dead planets, feeding on the remains of destroyed colonies. "Contact," reported his sensor officer. 3 large signatures unlike anything in our databases." "Show me," Jin-ho ordered. The main screen filled with nightmare shapes that seemed to bend light around them. They were not ships in any sense. Humans understood. They looked like living shadows wrapped around cores of impossible geometry. As Jin-ho watched, one of them consumed a piece of orbital debris, and the metal simply ceased to exist. "All ships, this is Defiance," Jin-ho broadcast. "Execute wildfire protocol." The human fleet split into 3 groups and accelerated toward the enemy at maximum speed. The Harbinger vessels turned to meet them, moving with fluid grace that defied physics. The first energy beams lanced out from the enemy ships. Where they touched human vessels, armor and hull plating simply vanished. The cruiser Vengeance took a direct hit and lost its entire port side. But the ship kept flying, its crew routing power around the damage. "Nuclear warheads armed," reported Jinho's weapons officer. "All tubes loaded. Fire everything," Jinho ordered. Dozens of nuclear missiles streaked toward the enemy. The Harbinger ships absorbed the explosions like sponges drinking water, growing larger and more solid with each blast. "Conventional weapons are useless," reported the destroyer Courage. "They are eating our attacks." Jinho smiled grimly. He had expected this. Human military doctrine was built on one simple principle. When the enemy is stronger, change the rules. "All ships ramming speed," he commanded. "If they want to eat our weapons, let them choke on our ships." The Defiance accelerated to its maximum velocity, aiming directly at the largest Harbinger vessel. Around him, the crew worked with deadly calm, routing all power to engines and structural integrity. "Sir," his communications officer said, "Admiral Dong Min is ordering us to withdraw." "Tell the Admiral that Earth does not retreat," Jinho replied. "Tell him humanity lights fires in the darkness." The Defiance struck the Harbinger vessel at nearly the speed of light. The impact vaporized both ships in a ball of nuclear fire that burned like a newborn star. But in that moment of destruction, something unexpected happened. The Harbinger vessel screamed. The sound carried across space itself, a cry of pain and surprise that every human ship detected. For the first time in centuries, a Harbinger had been hurt. "They can be killed," whispered Commander Park aboard the cruiser Determination. "They can actually be killed." The battle became a dance of death. Human ships used their destroyed comrades as weapons, ramming burning hulks into enemy vessels. They detonated their own reactors as improvised bombs. They even used asteroid debris as kinetic projectiles, turning space junk into artillery shells. When the shooting stopped, 2 Harbinger vessels drifted dead in space. The third had fled, wounded and afraid. Half the human fleet was gone, but they had achieved the impossible. News of the victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. For 3 centuries, no force had successfully fought the Harbingers. Ancient civilizations with weapons that could crack planets had fallen in hours. But humans, primitive humans with their simple ships and nuclear weapons, had won. On distant worlds, beings who had hidden in fear began to hope. In the crystal chambers of the Galactic Council, delegates stared at reports they could not believe. Earth had lit the first flame of resistance. And across the galaxy, other fires began to kindle in the darkness. Captain Yunji stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching her sensors fill with impossible readings. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace all around her position, but these were not human vessels. Strange craft with designs she had never seen before emerged from the void. "Captain," Lieutenant Junho called from his communications station, "we are receiving identification signals from 12 different species. The Cathari are here." Yunji felt her heart skip. The Cathari were legendary warriors who had retreated to the galaxy's edge centuries ago, disgusted by the Council's endless politics. Their blade-shaped dreadnoughts were works of art and death, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. "They are requesting permission to join our formation," Junho continued, disbelief clear in his voice. "Granted," Yunji replied. "Ask them what changed their minds." The answer came from war leader Thakara herself, her 4-armed form appearing on the main screen. "Human warriors showed us that honor still exists in this galaxy. The Cathari do not hide while brave souls fight alone." More ships continued to arrive. The Botanical Collective sent their living vessels, massive creatures that pulsed with green light and breathed in the vacuum of space. Each ship was grown rather than built, their hulls made of living wood that could heal battle damage. Even the Glicks have sent sabotage teams, Junho reported, barely able to contain his amazement. Yunji nodded, watching the strangest fleet in galactic history form around her ship. The Glicks were known as cowards and merchants caring only for profit. If even they were willing to fight, humanity's example had sparked something incredible. Admiral Dongmin coordinated the growing resistance from his new flagship, Prometheus. The bridge buzzed with activity as staff officers worked to integrate dozens of different species into a unified fighting force. Translation software worked overtime to handle languages that ranged from mathematical equations to scent-based communications. Status. Report, Dongmin requested from his operations officer. We now have forces from 37 different species, Commander Youngsu replied, checking his datapad. The humans provide tactical coordination and modified weapons. The Cathari bring heavy assault ships. The Botanical Collective offers medical support and repair services. Everyone else contributes what they can. And the Galactic Council? Still, debating. They formed 3 new committees this week to study the situation. Dongmin shook his head. While politicians argued real warriors prepared for battle, Earth's factories worked day and night to produce modified weapons for the Allied fleet. Human engineers shared their hard-won knowledge of Harbinger weaknesses with anyone willing to listen. Dr. Ji Wu, now serving as the fleet's chief science officer, had made the breakthrough everyone needed. Her analysis of the Proxima battle revealed that Harbingers could be hurt by high-energy impacts combined with certain radiation frequencies. Human weapons were crude, but effective because they hit hard and fast. We need to take the fight to them, she told the command staff during a strategy meeting. Every day we wait, they consume more worlds and grow stronger. The opportunity came when Commander Heiwan's reconnaissance team discovered something terrifying. Deep space probes had found the source of the Harbinger threat, a massive construct hidden at the galaxy's edge, older than recorded history. It is not a ship, Heiwan reported via secure transmission. It is a machine the size of a moon, built by something that came before all of us. The Harbingers are not invaders. They are antibodies designed to cleanse the galaxy when life becomes too complex. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Allied fleet. They were not fighting an invasion. They were fighting extinction itself, programmed into the galaxy's very structure by beings who had died billions of years ago. How many Harbingers can it create? Dongmin asked. Unlimited numbers, Heiwan replied. As long as that construct exists, they will keep coming. We could win 1,000 battles and still lose the war. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council finally acknowledged the crisis. Their response was exactly what everyone expected. They sent diplomatic envoys to negotiate with the Harbingers. The ancient constructs answered by accelerating their advance toward the galaxy's core worlds. They offered to surrender, Youngsu reported with disgust. The Council proposed giving the Harbingers the Outer Rim territories in exchange for leaving the core worlds alone. And the Harbingers' response? They destroyed the diplomatic ship and consumed the entire Centauri sector. The news galvanized the Allied fleet. If the galaxy's leaders would not act, then the warriors would act. For them, plans were made for a desperate assault on the construct itself. But first they needed more ships, more weapons, more time. The resistance began hitting Harbinger supply lines, using guerrilla tactics learned from human military history. Small groups of ships would strike fast and disappear before the enemy could respond. They rescued refugees from doomed worlds and salvaged weapons from destroyed fleets. Each victory inspired more species to join the fight. The proud hegemony sent a battle group. The peaceful Traders Union contributed supply ships. Even some council worlds began secretly supporting the resistance. Earth had become the center of a growing rebellion that spanned the galaxy. In hidden bases and captured stations, warriors from dozens of worlds trained together, learned from each other, and prepared for the final battle. The galaxy was finally awakening from its long sleep of fear, and at the heart of it all, humanity burned like a beacon, showing everyone that sometimes the only way to save tomorrow was to fight today. Admiral Dongmin stood in the command center of the Allied fleet's flagship, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the largest military force in galactic history. Ships from 43 different species floated in formation around him, their crews united by one simple truth: the galaxy would not die quietly. Final count, sir, reported Fleet Coordinator Youngsu, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. 2,700 vessels ready for assault, Casualty projections remain at 90%. Dongmin nodded, studying the tactical display. The Harbinger construct loomed ahead like a mechanical moon, surrounded by defensive swarms that could destroy entire star systems. Ancient weapons that had slept for eons now stirred to life, preparing to defend the galaxy's executioner. "All ships, this is Admiral Dongmin," he broadcast across the fleet. "Today we carry the fire of every world, the hope of every species, the dreams of every child who wants to see tomorrow. We are not just fighting for survival. We are fighting for the right to exist." Captain Wu Jin listened to the Admiral's words from the bridge of his destroyer, Lightning Strike. Around him, his crew made final preparations for battle. They were young, most of them, barely out of military academy. But their eyes held the same determination that had carried humanity from caves to stars. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "Stellar disruptors are armed and ready." The stellar disruptors were humanity's final gift to the galaxy, devices that could force stars to collapse into themselves. Dr. Ji Wu had designed them based on her analysis of the construct's power systems. If they could create a chain reaction, through the ancient machine's energy grid, they might destroy it completely. The battle began with waves of automated ships carrying the disruptors toward the construct's outer defenses. These vessels had no crews, only computers programmed with one mission: get close enough to deploy their weapons before dying. Harbinger vessels poured from the construct like angry insects, their dark forms absorbing energy beams and missile strikes. But the Allied fleet had learned from humanity's example. They did not try to match the enemy's power. Instead, they fought with cunning and sacrifice. Captain Wu Jin led his squadron in a desperate charge through the enemy lines. His ship shuddered under Harbinger fire, hull plates peeling away like old paint. But he pressed forward, protecting the automated vessels that carried the galaxy's last hope. "Lightning strike to all ships," he called over the communications. "Opening Corridor 7 Alpha. All disruptor vessels proceed to target." His destroyer exploded in nuclear fire, taking 3 Harbinger vessels with it. But the sacrifice worked. The automated ships reached the construct's surface and began deploying their deadly cargo. Deep inside the ancient machine, stellar disruptors attached themselves to power conduits that had channeled energy for billions of years. The devices began their work, creating tiny artificial stars that burned through the construct's defenses from within. Commander Su Young led a boarding party into the construct's core, fighting through passages filled with mechanical guardians that had waited eons for intruders. Her team carried the final disruptor, the one that would trigger the chain reaction. "We are taking heavy casualties," she reported, her voice barely audible over the sound of energy weapons. "But we are almost to the core chamber." Admiral Dongmin watched from his flagship as the battle raged around the construct. Half his fleet was already gone, brave souls who had given everything for this moment. The Cathari fought with the fury of their ancestors, their blade ships carving through enemy formations. The Botanical Collective's living vessels wrapped themselves around Harbinger ships, strangling them with roots and vines. "Sir," Youngsu called urgently. "Massive energy buildup detected inside the construct. The disruptors are working." The ancient machine began to scream, a sound that carried across space itself and made every living being shudder with primal fear. Cracks of pure light appeared along its surface as the stellar disruptors forced its power systems into overload. "All ships, emergency withdrawal," Dongmin ordered. "Get clear of the blast zone." But even as he gave the order, he knew many would not escape. The construct's death would birth a dozen new stars, and the explosion would consume everything within light years. Dr. Jiwoo worked frantically at her station, monitoring the chain reaction she had created. The readings were beyond anything in her calculations. The construct was not just exploding, it was tearing holes in space itself. "Admiral," she called, "the reaction is spreading faster than predicted. We need to evacuate immediately." Dongmin looked at the tactical display one last time. Thousands of ships still fought in the battle zone, buying time for others to escape. His own flagship was too close to the construct to reach safety. "Signal all surviving vessels," he ordered calmly. "Tell them the mission is complete. Tell Then humanity kept its promise. The construct died in fire that outshone the galaxy's core. The explosion spread outward, consuming Harbinger vessels and turning the ancient machine into cosmic dust. The chain reaction Jiwoo had triggered destroyed the source of the galaxy's nightmares. When the fires finally died, the survivors found a changed galaxy. The Galactic Council tried to return to their old ways of politics and procedure, but the smaller species no longer listened with automatic respect. They had seen what courage could accomplish when combined with determination. Trade agreements now included protections for colony worlds. Military alliances formed between species that had never worked together before. Most importantly, a new philosophy spread among the stars. Sometimes the galaxy did not need permission to do what was right. On Earth, memorials honored those who had lit the stars on fire so that future generations might live in the light. Admiral Dongmin's name was carved in stone alongside those of Captain Jin Ho, Captain Wu Jin, and thousands of others who had chosen to burn bright rather than fade quietly. The galaxy had learned that when extinction comes calling, courage burns brighter than any star. And in the darkness between worlds, new fires continued to kindle, lit by those who refused to let hope die.